Peter Reeves from Mayfield East was checking a drive belt on the motor of the trawler Yesabard 2 when his right hand became jammed. The vessel was trolling in 27 fathoms of water, 3 kilometres off Redhead when the accident happened. Ambulance officer Christine Newton was taken to the trawler by the police-launched snack pool. Police praised the work of Mr Reeves' crewmates, who applied a tourniquet to the wound until the ambulance officer arrived. Peter Reeves from Mayfield East was checking a drive belt on the motor of the trawler Yesabard 2 when the fingers of his right hand became jammed. The vessel was trolling in 27 fathoms of water, 3 kilometres off Redhead when the accident happened. Ambulance officer Christine Newton was taken to the trawler by the launched stack pool on loan to the Water Police while the regular vessel, the Doyle, is being surveyed. Police praised the work of Mr Reeves' crewmates, who applied a tourniquet to the wound until the ambulance officer arrived. Mr Reeves suffered lacerations to the hand and suspected multiple fractures. He remains in a satisfactory condition in Royal Newcastle Hospital.
The northern branch of the Miners' Federation says overtime restrictions will stay in place while some of its members remain out of work. Assistant Vice President Bill Morgan said today that there will be no new developments before Wednesday's meeting with the Prime Minister. At that meeting, Bob Hawke will be asked by the union to establish a national coal marketing authority. If the PM agrees, the miners, as a trade-off, will agree to join the two-tiered wages system. They have traditionally operated well outside the arbitration system parameters. If the talks are not successful, the union has threatened that the Hunter Valley dispute could spread nationwide. Meanwhile, the Port of Newcastle was idle again today with a strike by 40 MSB employees. They're refusing to load coal in protest at changes to their roster. However, after weekend talks, the union may accept the 5-day rosters with certain conditions attached. The men will meet tomorrow morning to discuss the latest developments. In the meantime, both disputes have combined to create headaches for coal ship movements. 10 ships have been held up, 2 are specifically waiting for coal and allied orders. BHP's huge collier, the Iron Pacific, was due to start loading coal today for Korea. It's been forced to leave the port this afternoon and will anchor off the coast, waiting for its shipment. It's due to load Port Kembla coal at the weekend and could make the trip to Korea without its Newcastle content.
At the end of lap 7, we thought we were going pretty well at that stage, but then having a flat tyre, we lost it for a short period. It was a bit dicey after that. We were fighting for it right to the end.
And of course, Rodney Pitstock, your navigator, played a big part in the win?
A very big part. Rodney's always making me go harder, even when I was starting to slow up. So he's a great help and also a second pair of eyes for the dust and finding where you're going.
I guess a rest is in order now, but what next? What's the next step?
The next step's to South Australia, to Macquarie, which is the next round of the Australian Championship.
And you're feeling confident about that because you're in a pretty good position now, aren't you, after the win at Kempsey?
Well, I've had 3 finishes in places in class in the last 3 rounds, so hopefully my luck will hang out and we'll be there for the next 2 and keep our point score.
And finally, what about the car? How did it perform?
The car went really well. There's no mechanical problems whatsoever. I couldn't ask more of it. It's fit enough to do another couple of laps if we had to.
The first Youth Council was elected in May 1985 and helped school-age people have a say in the affairs of Lake Macquarie. The 9 girls and 7 boys represent wards which parallel those of the Senior Council. Last night, before the regular meeting, the 16 new aldermen on the Youth Council were introduced. They were presented with badges of office and a booklet explaining the council's operation. In the past, the Youth Council has successfully organised an art and literature competition and is in the process of establishing a drop-in centre. Future projects include cycleways and entertainment for under 18-year-olds. Convener, Alderman Doug Carley, says the concept is unique to Lake Macquarie.
Our research indicates to us that there is no democratically elected youth council anywhere in Australia. And so we hope, we're trying to set up this example in hopes that other communities will follow it. I know that the Lord Mayor in Newcastle is very interested in our council and the way it is elected, and we have spoken together on this matter and will be speaking again in the future.
Eleven coal and allied mines remain idle today because of the dispute. At issue is the miners' refusal to accept overtime, which has been banned by their union. Coal and Allied has expressed disappointment that the striking miners have ignored return-to-work orders issued by the local coal authority. Chief Executive Bruce Thompson says the mining unions have shown a complete disregard for the authority's order and are taking an arrogant stand. The Miners' Federation has turned the dispute into a call for a national coal marketing authority. It's offered the federal government a promise that it will join the two-tiered wages system if the marketing body is established. But if it doesn't get its own way, the union has threatened to extend this local stoppage nationwide. The loading of coal in Newcastle has been held up by a second dispute involving 40 MSB employees. These men will meet this morning to consider a return to work based on a new 5-day roster. But it will be too late for the Iron Pacific, one of 10 ships waiting to load coal. The giant BHP collier has been forced out of the harbour to wait offshore until loading operations return to normal. The new loans will be 0.5% cheaper than the average available from other lending institutions. The Newcastle Permanent expects this initiative to extend to 1,000 new loans over the next 3 months. That could represent an injection of $50 million into the local economy. However, this reduction in interest rates will not flow on to existing borrowers at this stage.
The reality is that until such time as interest rates on deposits fall and stabilise and reduce the cost of money of lending institutions, then this won't be possible. But when that happens, it will enable a reduction in the charges that are made to existing borrowers.
It is hoped that the new loans will stimulate the economy and result in a flow-on in jobs. Real estate agents greeted the announcement with optimism.
As I see it, it's an enormous display of trust in the community at large, and the sort of money Mr Wotherspoon is talking about, $50 million in 3 months, that's probably 3 times their normal lending rate from the figures he just gave us. I think it's wonderful news for the community at large.
Mr Corrigan was deeply involved in the negotiations in the early 80s, which facilitated the survival of this region's steel industry. The FIA Secretary said consultation and cooperation were the keys to success then, just as they are today to the survival of the mining industry. Mr Corrigan said he views the mining problems seriously and feels the industry's very survival is dependent on both sides softening their line and compromising. The steel industry rationalisation cost thousands of jobs, and Mr Corrigan sees no alternative this time either.
We survived in the steel industry because we cooperated in rationalisation. If we hadn't have, there would be no industry there. And what we did is looked at things and see where we could rationalise, and took the benefit, not the benefits of it, you can't get a benefit of redundancy, but found the best scheme that we could get, and worked it out that way. There's no use saying we're not going to cooperate, because if we didn't cooperate in the steel, and I'll repeat myself again, we'd had no steel industry now.
So what you're saying then is that if there's no cooperation in the coal industry, then mining will cease.
This is right, this is so, and I think, you know, it's a warning that I'm not only giving it to the unions, I can't tell that union what to do, and I don't intend to do it, but I think the whole organisation, the management and the unions should get together, or it'll go.
Mr Wilson's customers usually borrowed only $150 or $200 at a time, but they were desperate for the money and were charged huge interest. About 300 contracts similar to this one from a reputable lender were involved in the case, which came to the attention of the Department of Consumer Affairs.
He also filled in blanks on contracts after they had been signed, and in his application for a licence he indicated he'd be charging 48% interest, and in effect some contracts showed 170% interest.
As a result, Mr Wilson and Nartic Finance have been banned for 5 years. Borrowers need only repay Mr Wilson the principal under the decision handed down by the Commercial Tribunal.
If they have paid the amount of the principal, so that's the amount financed, they should stop paying and approach Mr Wilson to pay back anything over and above that principal. If he won't respond to that request, they should then approach the department.
However, the Commercial Tribunal was critical of the low levels of fines allowable under present legislation. Although Mr Wilson has been banned from lending money for 5 years, the maximum penalty was just $500. The department has issued 5 points to remember before signing a credit contract. Consumers should find out the cost of the credit, in other words, shop around for the best price. They should read the contract carefully and understand the contract. If something is not clear, get someone to explain it to you. You should cross out all the blank spaces on the form, and most importantly, take your time.
They're entitled to a copy of the contract prior to signing, so they should take that contract away, get out of the point of sale environment and just go through it very carefully and see whether they can in fact afford the repayments that will be shown on that contract.
It operates by...
John Robertson was a surveyor and town planner until he became interested in solar energy as an alternative power source. For the last 3 years, he's been developing solar-powered systems for use on farms and in homes. And he believes the possible uses for solar energy are increasing.
In most situations, you can put in an installation, an electrical installation running from solar power without having to run the mains power into the site. So you can use that, say, for fencing, you can use it for pumping, you can use it for domestic supply for your house. If you're, say, about 3/4 of a kilometre away from existing mains, you can put your house, you can electrify your house without having to connect. You can do it cheaper than by connecting onto mains.
Another application is the safety grid, invented in Canberra and powered by solar energy. It's basically a gate you don't have to open or shut. The solar-powered energiser generates several thousand volts across the mesh grid. And the advantage is that it keeps livestock in without the need of a conventional gate.
In tonight's news, the best of the Australian Army do battle for the Duke of Gloucester Cup. The harsh endurance competition started on Monday morning. Today, the teams of 9, representing 6 battalions, pushed themselves through the gruelling obstacle course.
For all the news,
join us tonight
at 6.
"74 professionals and 90 amateurs teed off in the tournament in very windy conditions. A total of $4,500 was up for grabs in the 18-hole tournament. Well-known pros who took part included Victoria's Mike Carl, who has played in the British Open, former Australian amateur champion Brett Ogle, and Roger Stevens from South Australia. The windy conditions tested all players today, with Brett Ogle being the only player to card less than par. Ogle won the tournament in a course record 2 under par 70, 2 shots ahead of Wyong's Greg Watton. Equal third were Roger Stevens and Colin Hunt on 1 over par 73.
Anger, avarice, envy, gluttony, sloth, lechery and pride may seem like unusual inspiration for contemporary art, but Michael Bell has based his first solo show in 3 years on the 7 deadly sins. The oil on canvas works are powerful and stark. The sheer size of the paintings and their dark images proves more than a little unsettling. According to the artist, they also contain a lot of humour.
Yeah, I find them pretty comfortable. I don't find them unnerving. I mean, they're good fun more than black or depressing, I think.
In 1984, Michael was Newcastle's first artist in residence. He says he attempted to produce one lighter painting for this exhibition, but the original theme kept reoccurring.
I tried to one of my family having a picnic, but it stayed out really nicely, but got a bit black on the way.
The exhibition can be seen at the Wood Street Gallery until the 16th of next month. Bureaucratic cover-ups, medical mayhem and identity mix-ups abound in this comedy of errors. The plot revolves around a fantastically wealthy Italian businessman who is kidnapped. A rescue attempt goes wrong and he is badly disfigured, which sets the scene for a hopeless confusion of identities between the businessman and his rescuer. The plot provides many openings for comedy, and the skillful actors exploit each chance.
Sorry, it's only a sedative.
Well, it's definitely a farce. It's a comedy. It's a total send-up of a lot of sacred cows, if you like, the medical profession, the legal profession, and about the power of very, very wealthy capitalists.
How suitable is it to Newcastle audiences?
I think very suitable for Newcastle audiences. You seem to have a big place here called the BHP, and you've got the coal yards in the state that they're in, and that you have a situation where an awful lot of people are working for 1 or 2 employers.
The play can be seen at the Highfield Azzurri Club tonight and again tomorrow evening.
As play began in the second half, the scores were locked 54-all, and the enthusiastic local crowd began to sense a possible Falcons victory.
The raging underdogs, is that the word, Terry?
Well, it certainly would be, and this would be a big upset if they can pull this one off.
But it was not to be. As the third quarter progressed, there were plenty of missed opportunities on both sides, and when the Falcons did score, the Bullets answered back in rapid fire.
Oh yeah! Everett backdoors. Loggins couldn't get his hands on. That was a great move for Everett.
Everett came sprinting back too with the extra enthusiasm of that shot, and Atkinson's adds to that.
Wayne McDaniel scored 36 points for the Falcons with 13 rebounds, while Jerry Everett scored 23 points. For the Bullets, John Dodge scored 24 points with 9 rebounds. As well, Atkinson and Loggins put in strong games for the Brisbane side. Throughout, the match proved to be entertaining and was certainly filled with a liberal share of body contact.
She simply hit the ground hard in the back play. John Dorge, bang! Tell you what, George might have been quite fortunate to still be out there then. The defensive foul on.
Lakes went into the match needing a win to keep them in grand final contention. A good crowd at Carl Oval saw some determined play from both sides, but it wasn't until the second half that Lakes began to show their dominance over the Pumpkin Pickers. The turning point came when winger Lindsay Bounds scored after some fine lead-up work. Peter Walsh and Steve Walters, along with Michael McKinnon and Michael Pittman, were the best for Lakes, with Laurie Perry and Darren Hughes the pick for Maitland. In the third grade, Maitland won 16-2, and in the reserves, Lakes won 20-8. While the rain clouds may have darkened the proceedings, there was plenty of music and entertainment to keep the crowds happy. The day also had special significance for the Wallsend Public School. Pupils dressed in 19th century clothes to celebrate the school's 125th anniversary. And with the shops in Nelson Street open, there was brisk trading and plenty to cheer about. A controversial visit to Newcastle ended yesterday. The passenger and car ferry, the Abel Tasman, left port bound for Tasmania. In the last 2 weeks, the vessel has been in dry dock undergoing survey. Problems arose when the ship was delayed in berthing. Despite the difficulties, the Abel Tasman and its complement of tourists will be back.
The hospitality shown by Newcastle and the friendliness and the standard of work we've received here in the dry dock would certainly mean that we'd come back again.
Meantime, the time ball on top of the Customs House in Newcastle is undergoing renovations. The ball was used by mariners late last century and up to 1941 as an accurate timepiece. At midday, the ball would be hoisted up the mast and dropped at exactly 1 o'clock. The restoration work on a unique part of the region's history is being undertaken by the Company of Master Mariners and will hopefully be ready for the bicentennial Newcastle Regatta. And at the Civic Theatre yesterday, about 1,600 people were entertained by the Police Military Band. On the program, some favourite waltzes by Richard Rogers.